We're missing a couple.
Where's Matt?
Oh, man. Kim can't be here.
Kim we knew was.
We can still have it.
That's your.
Yes.
I have somewhere. Yep. Or maybe they're come over here, so I can show. Yeah, I had abstaining from drinking. I didn't want to smell it out. No, I mean, it's. Yeah, I wasn't about to, hard to say, here, Mike.
Oh, this is easier.
See?
This is really now.
Well, yeah,
It's bigger.
it's just enough acre over here. Even when I'm sitting in it's always bigger.
Do you want to move over by John so you can see?
Yeah.
But they
We have plenty of room.
I can always make
That's
it,
true. I think
I can make it as big as you want.
So they put that house together. Yeah, they're for the most part.
We have one and you pretty close. So we can have.
No, it's just-
One at a time.
Yeah.
One is 7:13 and one is 16. Do that or was it 2:30? Yeah, I'll do that after we do.
Did you know Sue was?
No. No.
Did you like that?
Oh, okay. I didn't bring it.
It's been a busy month or so here, so.
Yeah.
Ready? Okay, let's bring this meeting to order, please. It's the meeting of the Harbor Springs Zoning Board of Appeals. Roll call, Jeff, please.
Michael Behrman. Kim Morris, Sue Stewart, Manny Hines are absent. John Leo.
Here.
Bob Thone.
Here.
Kathy Mutchell.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum, but one thing that we have done at previous meetings, Bob, so when we have 4 members present, there is the possibility that a motion could end in a tie vote. And in that situation, that motion would fail. So what we have done in the past is we have offered the opportunity to applicants that are here today. They can continue with the meeting today if they would like to, but because of that scenario, we have previously offered that they have the option to table for the next meeting should they want to wait for a full 5-member board. Excuse me. So if you'd like to offer that, you
I
may.
would. Who are you the applicants? Okay. What's your take on that?
We're gonna go.
Okay.
And then 3rd Street also.
Yeah.
Everybody's comfortable? All right, just making sure that that was offered and
Okay.
coming to you.
So be it. Approval of the minutes from last meeting? Questions, concerns?
I read through them and they looked accurate to me.
Okay,
So I would make a motion to approve.
second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
so approved. Okay, public comments on these or
So I would say if you want to do public comments for anything not on the agenda,
not on the agenda? Okay. None? Okay, nobody with an axe to grind?
and we will take public comments on things on the agenda, which when we open up the public hearing for those items.
Okay. Okay, let's go to new business. And we'll go to a variance request on 445 Short Street.
So
Hi, and good evening. Sorry.
We're on Short Street.
I am Short Street.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I may not be short, but I am on
Okay,
Short Street.
gotcha.
just so that we have proper procedure,
Yep.
if you don't mind, if we have a motion to open the public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I would make a motion to open the public meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion approved. Let's go back to Short Street.
So if we can pull up that thing, I'll briefly provide an introduction and then hand it over to you. How about that? Yeah. Can you go to the, yeah, there's a site plan that shows the layout of it on the property. That one right there, yeah. So this property, 445 Short Street, they're on the corner of Short Street and an alley. Because of that, they have a front yard setback and a corner side yard setback, which is essentially a front. And as we can see, the blue line here is the setback line. Most of the house sits outside of the setback within their non-buildable area. They have a small front porch that's this half here. They're asking for a variance to build an additional front porch that would extend to this line of the home here. Pretty straightforward, and I'll hand it over to the property owner to explain his whys.
Okay, please.
Hi, I'm Vince Mahalik, and this is my wife Sharon. We live at 475 East Bluff Drive here in Harbor. And thank you for hearing our request this evening. As a bit of a background, we recently purchased this home, which was Jean Jardine's home at 445 Short Street. It was built in 1895, maybe earlier. This home is where Jean's husband, Dean Jardine, was born and raised, and with his 4 siblings and parents. Once Jean and Dean were married, they took over the home. Jean lived there until her death last November. She was our neighbor for 11 years. We're requesting to rebuild and slightly expand the front porch approximately 7 feet to the east. Our intent is to preserve the charm and architectural integrity of the home. The goal is to keep the update simple, use good long-lasting materials, and increase the enjoyment of the home similar to those in our neighborhood. The current porch is in disrepair and is a safety hazard. The wood is rotted and the porch was not built correctly. In fact, there are no concrete footings. The current configuration doesn't allow for any real usable porch space. The small expansion of 7 feet would move the east side railing, which is currently inserted into a shutter, to the right of the front window. This expansion would make the front porch more usable, safe, and welcoming. In addition, this porch will fit the home's historic cottage feel. We're not asking to have a roof put over the porch. The Jardine home was built originally on one of 2 50-foot lot parcels. In essence, back then it was 2 lots. The current zoning makes this a 100-foot lot. As a result of the zoning changes since the original construction, the entire house now is in a setback. Therefore, any changes to the exterior dimensions of the home will require a variance. In our request, you'll see that we've evaluated porches from the surrounding homes, and we believe that our request is very reasonable. And you'll also see that we looked at alternatives, of which there were none that were feasible. Porches are common architectural themes in Harbor Springs. They create a welcoming sense of community. It will preserve and increase the enjoyment of this home and will be built in a manner that will be safe and last for years. We believe this zoning variance request is justified due to the fact that the home is entirely within current setbacks, creating a practical difficulty. It is reasonable when you look at the homes surrounding this property, and there are no other reasonable alternatives without significant compromises. We respectfully request your approval on a small front porch addition. Thank you.
Comments?
Is there anything in the code other than the practical difficulty of it being in the wrong place that would prevent this from happening?
That would prevent them from building or?
From doing the modification they want to, which is replacing and expanding the porch.
It's outside of their buildable envelope, so the code doesn't really have a method for them to do that other than to get a variance.
Right, but other than that,
John is saying if it wasn't for the fact that they were built outside the setback, would you be a reason to not grant on this porch? Like if they were within the setback?
Yeah, if the house was moved and situated in the middle of the lot, there would be no issues here.
and if it's granted, and you said you're not planning on putting a roof over it.
Correct, John.
After the fact, if they wanted to add a roof, would they be able to do that?
They would have to,
We'd have to come back.
depending on
They'd have
how
to come
you,
back.
depending on how you word your approval, they would have to come back. You could, one thing that we have typically included in our, when we have variance requests for front porches, is we typically have asked for and included a condition that they not be fully enclosed.
Right.
But we have permitted roofs over them, so depending on how you wanted to word your approval.
That's why I was asking, because I know that you have to come back if at a later date you wanted to add it. But there would be no reason other than the same conditions you have today. So if we decide to approve it, I would say we should, I would propose that we add that so that if after the fact you want to add the roof, you don't have to go through the rodeo again.
Thank you.
That's all I had.
I'm thinking that this home existed long before the alley and the setbacks and the zoning code. We're kind of retroacting this whole scenario. I don't have a problem.
I happen to live in that area myself, and we do a lot of dog walking, and long, before this meeting, we've always enjoyed the charm of that house, with one caveat: that porch just looks horrendous. Especially compared to surrounding porches, which the Mahalics have given us some pictures of. What I can attest to that you look at what neighbors have, and you look at that house, and it's the house seems out of place because it doesn't have a porch. I think the fact that you're not looking to build, a huge obstructive, just something that's just out of line with what's in the neighborhood. I respect that and appreciate that, you're coming with more of a modest. So, and certainly understand the practical difficulty of what you're dealing with, so.
I have a question for you, Jeff. I think, as I'm not sure in the long run, this is still just one lot, right? With the house outside the setbacks and the buildable area, right, is over here. So there's nothing in this approval that affects. That's still just one lot, and that's the only house on that lot, correct? And that's the only house that can be on that lot? Are we approving anything that puts us in a funny space later? I'm not picking on you guys, I'm just,
That's a good question.
how does it affect that?
I believe it's just one lot. The width,
Okay.
the overall width of the property looks like it's 100 feet. In that neighborhood, I can't recall if the minimum width is 80 or 100. I would have to check with the zoning code. I don't have it in front of me now, but I'm not sure that they would be able to get approval to split this. Because I don't think that the change, lot sizes would meet zoning as they're currently written. So.
Okay,
Does
because
that answer your question?
That's my only concern. Could we be in a position where the current owners or somebody else who owns it later comes back in 5 years and says, well, we want to put a house on the main part, add a house, and I don't know what's involved, and I wouldn't want anything we're doing today to inadvertently, that's my only question, really, and
It would be whatever the zoning is at the time when they make that request. If it complied with zoning, then they might be able to do something, but it would, I
So,
don't
for
know that
example-
adding this porch would have much of an effect on that.
I mean, I can't imagine it by itself. I don't see any issue with the porch addition. That was my only
So
concern.
theoretically, in the future, the zoning code could change to, change the lot requirements. And if, right now, as Jeff is saying, that, it doesn't seem like you could split that property to have two homes on it, but we can't predict what the future will.
Okay.
So let's say, a few decades from now, they're like, well, we want much smaller lots, then theoretically, it may be
Okay.
possible, but based on the current zoning, no.
Okay, I understand.
I think my concern is some of what Kathy said, you know, whenever you're looking at granting variances, you're always thinking, okay, we're establishing a precedence. But each situation is so unique, I think, you know, so that's my internal conflict, you know, setting a precedent for all homes in similar situations. If somebody came to this board with a request that wasn't, you know, that still had some practical difficulty issues, but was just simply, you know, didn't check the other boxes. You know, are we in that arena? But that's.
Tell me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but haven't we sat here previously and maybe even in planning and talked about eliminating zoning for porch additions in order to accommodate people to have more porches? I know, I mean, that's come up and we've talked about it and spoken to actually changing that zoning.
I don't recall that. I know that we did in one district where the lots were excessively narrow. We did make a change to the zoning code in the late 90s to allow for porches to extend into the front yard setback to some degree to help alleviate some of that narrowness. We have talked about potential changes to the code where there already is an existing footprint. But let's say that the building is only 1 story or has a very low roof, that not requiring a variance if they want to add more height, but not go out farther to the property.
Are you gonna live in this house?
No, we're gonna use it for our guest cottage. We both have very large families and they wind up filling up the house pretty quickly.
We should also see if anybody in the audience has any comments or concerns regarding the project.
Anybody like to speak to this?
I think front porches are great. I mean, I do. I think they're part of this town. And if it's a non-usable porch, the way it is now, especially in size or safety, then I think to put a little more room outside and put a couple of chairs on the porch is great. I think that would be a great addition.
We did receive 2 pieces of correspondence. I got them in the mail today and I provided copies of those 2. Yeah.
Would you like to bring this to a vote?
Close the public hearing.
Yeah, we should probably first close the public hearing and then have a little bit of follow-up discussion to lead into that.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing.
We have a
You're
motion.
done.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Second. Yeah, done.
So if you wouldn't mind, if we would like to briefly run through the findings of fact to review and make sure that have a brief discussion on that to cover our bases. Would you like me to read some of those off?
Please
Okay.
do.
The first one, does the board find that there are or are not unique characteristics of the subject land, not to the general characteristic of the surrounding area, i.e. the hardship is not shared by others? And we should specify our reasons why we feel that, find that. Any thoughts on?
I believe that the whole situation is unique.
Yeah.
Like I
It
said,
sounded
the
like-
house is falling victim to zoning and streets that didn't exist when the house was built.
So really the location of the home.
The location of the home as it relates to
I think
the required zoning.
the style of most of the homes in that neighborhood the porches are, nice architectural features. And I can't say that for this home presently.
And I think-
Talking about arresting somebody for a crime that wasn't a crime when they committed it.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah. Well, and I guess let's back up very briefly. So there are a number of existing nonconformities with the property. At the time that the home was built, there maybe wasn't zoning in place that would permit that or not allow it. It was built legally, but now we have zoning in place that would prevent the home from being located in the same location. And Michael, you mentioned the style of the front porch and that it wouldn't be done again. And I think that leads into the second finding of fact. The board finds that strict application of the zoning code would be unfair to the applicant. And I think that ties into the reasonable use argument of most properties have a front porch that extends the width of the home. Does that summarize what you were saying?
That's what I agree.
The next one here, the board finds that the strict compliance with the zoning code restrictions would prevent the owner of using the property for a permitted purpose or would render conformity with the zoning code restrictions unnecessarily burdensome. I think that's very similar to the previous
Oh,
one.
yeah.
Mhm.
The next one, the board finds or does not find that there are no reasonable alternatives to granting a variance.
There are no reasonable alternatives
think
that
so.
I can come up with.
The next one, the board finds or does not find that a variance can be granted without substantial injury to adjacent property and that the neighborhood in which the property is located.
Fine, yes.
I don't
Not gonna
think,
affect anyone.
I don't see how it affects anybody.
The last one is, does the board find or not find that the practical difficulty was self-created?
No, it was not self-created in
Homeless.
any way, shape, or form.
So with going through those findings of fact in that discussion, does anybody have a motion or?
I would like to bring up that John Leo had mentioned previously about whether or not there should be a condition on the motion, so if that's something you want to discuss as well.
Anybody have any other feelings on that one? We have put a caveat on prior approvals that they not fully enclose it, making it another room. But I would make a motion that we approve the request with the conditions that they agree not to ever enclose it as a full room. And to allow them to add a roof, subject to whatever other code requirements exist without coming back to the ZBA, should they choose to do that in the future.
Okay,
That's,
that's, I'll second that.
I think that's reasonable.
And you're comfortable with that condition?
Yes, we are.
Would you like a roll call vote?
Please.
Kathy Macho,
Yes.
Bob Thomo,
Yes.
John Leo,
Yes.
Michael Behrman,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Good luck with your project.
Yeah.
And the first porch party will be when?
As soon as we get it done.
If we can find a contractor this time.
We'll try to.
That's not a trivial.
Oh, okay.
That's not trivial.
And Kate can come.
Any-
Okay. Done with this?
Next
Okay.
agenda.
Let's move on to 587 Third Street.
This one is a little bit more complicated. Just because there are more approvals that will be pending after this, potentially. This is the site plan was submitted.
Would you explain that?
Absolutely, I'm going to, yes. So this is the site plan submitted for 5/8/73rd. What they are asking for, we have the existing home here outlined in this yellow hash line. They're asking for a variance to build the second floor addition here. The setback line for the rear of the home is this dash line here and this dash line here. They're also asking for a connecting breezeway attaching to the existing one-story garage. Again, that goes back into the rear yard setback. Also, then they have the one-story garage. This is the setback line in the rear for the garage. This is the side setback line for the garage. And they're proposing that they would like to put a second-story addition with living space here, which would be in the setback in this area. Another thing that comes into play in this situation, this property is right below the bluff. And so we have the restricted bluff zone that comes into play here. This red line is the end of that restricted bluff zone. So any work done in this back area here, if they receive approval for the variance today, their next step would be to go to the planning commission, which would review the plan as well. Their responsibility at the planning commission would be to make sure that things are done and approved by a civil engineer, that any work that they would do would not risk the stability of the bluff. So we don't have to worry about that too much here at our discussion. Obviously, it can be part of the discussion, but the planning commission will have another meeting about that to really go into depth with that review of the stability of the bluff, making sure that it's safe. Another thing that will be discussed at the planning commission would be the second story that they're proposing to add here on the garage would be considered guest quarters, and that requires special land use. So there's a whole nother discussion regarding special land use and the standards for that approval. So our discussion here, as normal, is going to be regarding the placement of the second floor here outside of the setback area, the addition of the breezeway in the back of the setback area, and then this area here that would be added to the second floor of the garage, which would all need variances to be built. And they would require those approvals if they were to proceed with any other approvals, or they would need to modify their plan should they not get approval.
So you've broken this down so it's votable?
Yes, so I'm just explaining that there are other aspects that the planning commission will look at. And that they will get into those, and we don't need to worry about some of those things. Our focus will be on the practical difficulty of the site and whether they have a reasonable need for a variance.
This garage is new construction?
There's an existing one-story garage. They're proposing to add a second floor to it.
To the existing, okay.
So the existing garage will not be torn down and rebuilt from the ground up?
I don't know. The applicants are here and they can provide more detail of what they plan on doing with the property. So we can hand it over to them or we should
Open the hearing.
we should have our motion to open the public hearing. Sorry.
Okay.
Motion to open the public.
Second? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay. Yes, sir. Okay.
Oh, no, the applicant goes.
We're gonna have the applicant introduce and then anybody else in the public can provide their responses and thoughts.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you guys, really appreciate it. My name is Lee Jelinek, I'm the applicant. My wife wanted to be here as well, but there's some weather coming in tonight and we've got 6 kids, so it's a miracle I have any hair, but we didn't want to both get stuck up here. We came from Lower Michigan. Just wanted to just kind of say thank you for, I mean, the process here is remarkable. It's rare. Today I started my day with a similar meeting in the city of Pontiac, that there's a mayor's business council. Our business is headquartered in Pontiac, and I was just sitting as I was watching you guys and the debate, just how important it is in our country to have this functioning local government. And usually you guys are spending way more hours on it than you ever get thanked for. So thank you. Because if we don't have local government like this, we're nowhere right now. My family, we have 6 kids. We're a blended family. We're a Brady bunch. And over the years, as we've vacationed, we kept finding ourselves making our way back to Harbor Springs. And my wife and I finally looked at each other in the winter and said, we need to put some roots down here. This is where we want to end up. This is where we want to be in a long term. This is where we want, when our grandkids come to visit us someday, this is where we want them to be visiting us. And we were very fortunate to have found this property on 3rd Street. We think it's wonderful. The street is quaint. We love the ability to walk into town. We want to be up here a lot in the winter. We have kids that ski as well. So we're so excited to become part of the community. And I think you'll find that as we talk through it, it's some of the similar situation of the prior home. I mean, this home was built in 1920. Obviously, it was built before some of these setbacks were in place. And our intention to, with the construction we want to do is we want to beautify it and restore it to its former glory. So everything from the kinds of wallpaper we're picking out for the interior to the fixtures, everything is meant to restore it to its former glory and really make it look and feel like probably it once did. The living space above the garage, it's just for our 2 teenage boys. Again, we have 6 kids, and if we could have found a bigger house or something was more available, maybe we would have considered that, but we found that this was perfect. And when we looked at the other ways that the garages were used on the street, a couple of houses down and so on and so forth, we thought we had a pretty good chance of this. So, this is just to make sure we've got some space for our kids to spread out a little bit when we're up here. The youngest is 8, the oldest is 16, and there's, 4 in between them. And so we appreciate you guys taking the time to hear this. And some neighbors are here from the street to support us, which we really appreciate. And then Steve, who's our chief architect, is here to talk a little bit more to some of the facts of the property.
Yeah, I'll second Lee's comment in terms of just thank you guys for allowing us to bring this to you guys. It looks, when you look at the colors and the massing on the image, it's really not as overwhelming as it might look. We're looking to expand, we'll start with that purple image. We're looking to expand the 2nd floor above existing. And so it's just a matter of taking the mass and raising those walls up to get some available square footage up there. Much like Lee had mentioned, he's got a house full of children, and we felt like one of the most practical ways to add square footage to the building without trying to expand it beyond the bounds of the property. We're very conscientious about how much land area or total square footage the house takes up in the lot. And there really isn't available lot space to expand beyond the existing shape and size of the building. And so that was the most practical way to add to the existing structure, was to simply go up, bring that same roof line back, and create space. The second thing, and Lee touched on that, was to try to find available space above the existing garage. And what we're asking for there is, and Michael, you had brought up, we are going to use the existing structure. We're not tearing that down. Partly because of what was mentioned in terms of the use of the civil engineer. That is a very fortified foundation. And, we've looked at it from the structural standpoint, and we really want it to stay. So that existing structure will remain as is. And we're looking to just essentially create an attic space above that garage. And Lee had touched on how our request for doing that is very consistent with all the adjoining neighbors. And you might see that in the packet of information I distributed prior to the meeting. And so we're being very conscientious about the design of that element. We wanted to keep it lower profile than the existing pink house to the east. And there may be a concern in terms of encapsulating that house to the east a little bit, but we feel like it's only 10 or 12 square feet of a wedge shape that's really going to come into play for the neighbor's property. So as you look at this image, and it must have been provided by the homeowner next door, we're simply, and I tried to illustrate that in the packet here with the white outline of where we're kind of adding that additional area. You can see that we're not really blocking in a lot of that rear yard. We're trying to be very conscientious about not doing that. And then also there's no windows facing to the east, and so their privacy would not be violated in any way. And so that's what we're trying to do with that additional space above the garage. And then simply because this will be a seasonal home, or not, it'll be a 4-season home, it won't be just a summer home, that it's very important for them to have the availability to go, particularly if we are able to build that second story above the garage, to have it attached, particularly with children, to have immediate connection to the house. And this is, again, very consistent with the adjoining houses in that immediate area around there, that this is something that's been granted. And Jeff had, when I first spoke to Jeff about doing this, he made mention that it's, be conscientious about the size of the connector so the building can still be evaluated as an accessory structure. Much like Jeff mentioned, it's a guest quarters, but in fact, it won't be a guest quarters, it'll be the children's bedroom. But to keep that a small scale element, like we tried to do, and if you look in the illustration here, to not make it overly impactful to the two structures as they are, to keep it as minimal as possible. And so that's just a bridge. It's bringing those two structures together so we have availability to that space above the garage. And give it that the ability in winter months to be able to traverse from the garage to the house, again, much like the adjoining neighbors are enjoying as well. So that's what we're asking for. Again, it may look like a lot, but in essence, it's 7 feet onto the back of the building. It's a 10-foot wide connector, and then it's taking and creating attic space above that existing garage using the existing structure. So that's what we're asking for. As Jeff alluded to, there's other steps beyond today that we'll have to get approval for if we get your approval to be able to build this. But so there's other things to consider, but we believe that it's, again, the hardship, obviously, as Jeff or Lee had mentioned, hardship is for us is the bluff is something that has to be considered, but then also the setbacks and how we're very close to, we're right on essentially the property line, but that seems to be a consistent trait among the homes in this immediate area where almost all the homes are on top of the property line, because at that time zoning didn't exist and you guys could, anybody could build right on top of the property. And the house to the east, which is 595 East 3rd Street, that what I believe is the appendage is closest to the street was once a small garage that now is converted into living space, exactly what we're asking to do. And so it's pretty much the consistent fabric of the neighborhood. And, we believe our request is consistent with that.
And just the piece that we handed out was just, we wanted to address the concerns of one of the neighbors, so that's the paper copy that you guys got. Thank you.
What comments from the public?
Please. Good evening. My name is Bill Brown. I live at 251 East Main Street in Harbor Springs. My purpose this evening is to give any color and comment for my sister-in-law, whose property is 595 East 3rd Street. To refute the last statement that was made by the architect, that was Pontius's church for a number of years. Having reviewed all of the records with Jeff, it was never a garage. It has always been a vestibule to the home. And the home does exist exactly where it has been. But there are 3 questions I have for you. 1, did you receive a complete package in your package? That would be a letter and photos. 2, did you have a chance to review them? And 3, is there any questions you may have of me that I could participate with or at least give reference to? Thank you.
We did receive correspondence from the neighboring property owner there, and that was, the pictures were in the packet, yeah.
Any other comments? Please.
I just would be thrilled if they could get this approved. We've had kind of a rough couple of years, and it would be nice to have a lovely family that obviously needs more room for their expanding family. We're thrilled that they have bought the house.
Yes, could you identify yourself?
I'm sorry, it's Carol Smith at 549 East Third, and this is my husband Tom.
Thank you, Karen.
Tom?
I think that that house is a bunker. It's a gorgeous house inside. It's solid as a rock. If anyone wanted to know what kind of shape it's in, it'd be terrible to throw it in the dumpster. Like we live on next door, west of the house. We did something exciting for the people here when we put our house up on a truck and it went north up to Stutzmanville Road, and it's living a new life up there, and we built a new house the way we wanted. They're not even doing it, they're just moving in, fixing it up a little bit, not changing much. I think it's a benefit to them that they're doing what they're thinking of trying to do, and I welcome it. Thanks.
Is that it from the audience? Okay,
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
okay. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
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 So moved. Okay, would you step up here for one second?
sure.
Is that what this is gonna look like?
Yeah, that's.
Two stories to the back?
Yes, to the bluff side, yeah.
Okay.
So, but in essence,
So this will be a full
well,
20 feet?
no, this is actually,
You have no drawing. here.
no, I
Show us
understand, yeah. That is actually what grade is in the back. So it's actually one story from the back.
Okay, but is that what this is gonna look like?
Yes,
from this
exactly,
side?
yes, yeah, shed would help the back, yeah.
If I may.
Yeah, we should share it with the other.
So this is what's gonna happen here. Small. That's what the profile on the side is.
Are you on the?
What's
I'm
the,
not sure. I'm reading that way, Bob.
There was no side view.
There is no side elevation. That's why
Which side are you looking at? Are you looking at this side?
Yes. you're looking at that side.
Okay,
So
but you were
which-
pointing it, okay.
So we're looking at the side view now, we're left side and we're third side.
left side, and so did he say that's great?
That's the grade.
We're gonna show the next door neighbor will see the.
Right, but that's what the neighbor will see, is
Yes.
that.
That's
I
what
see
the
what you're
neighbor
saying.
on the
East
east side
will
would
see.
see.
Okay, fine. I have a question, given that the two structures are connected, why is this still an accessory building and not part of the residence?
So, as Steve mentioned, we had a conversation before. And whenever you're connecting an accessory building to a principal building, there's a rule that we have in our zoning code that we have to be cognizant of. And that's the rule that determines at what point, when you're expanding and enlarging the connection between the garage, the house and the garage, does that accessory building just become part of the principal building?
Right.
And if that was the case, it would, could you go back to the screen right before, please? That would change their side yard setback for the garage from here to this line here, which would make that existing garage substantially more non-compliant or realistically a zoning violation unless they had a variance for that. So by maintaining the connecting breezeway between the house and the garage, the rule that we have in the code is that if the common wall between the breezeway and the garage is less than 50% of the overall width, that's how we determine that the garage gets to stay an accessory building versus becoming part of the principal building. that affords them the ability to maintain that line as their setback instead of this line. But it comes with the requirement that they then have to have special land use approval for the guest quarters and the rules and regulations that have come with guest quarters because of that closer proximity to the property line. Does that answer the question?
Although it would have been in the setback, I mean, the structure would have been in the setback in either category.
Right.
Okay,
Right, but
that's
one
what,
would have
that's what I
been
was,
substantially in the setback, is that what you're saying?
Right.
Right.
If they were to have widened this breezeway connection so that, let's say it was the full width of this edge of the home here and coming across, that would have made it in excess of the 50%, which would have made the garage part of the principal building, which would have dramatically changed their setback. So, you know, where right now only this portion is non-compliant, basically all of the garage would become non-compliant.
okay,
So
that's what I wasn't clear on mine.
what is the size of the connector space?
192.
I see the square feet, but that's not what I'm looking for. What's the width across the
It's
front?
10 feet wide and the garage.
It's 10 feet across,
Yeah.
and how many feet? Oh,
17.
7 feet, did you say,
17
yeah.
back, okay.
And the garage is 22 feet.
Wait, so
10 feet front to back.
Yeah.
Back is
10 feet front to back
Yeah.
and
Right, the
17.
width of the current garage is 22, so we're under the 50%.
Okay, that's not what I was looking at. I was just trying to make sure I understood the dimensions.
Oh, this distance here?
Yes.
Yeah, that's labeled right here, 17 feet, 6 inches.
Okay,
from
I'm
here
sorry,
to here.
that I didn't see. Okay, I apologize. All right, okay. Okay. How, I guess my questions, and I'm not even sure who to address, but I'll start with you, is the concrete, that's that kind of wide gray boundary right
believe-
there,
I
yes.
believe, is that a retaining wall?
Is
Steve?
that a retaining
Yeah.
wall?
That's like up against the bluff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Well, it is, except that then there's flat area behind that, and then it goes up again,
There's
correct?
a patio in the rear of the building and then the retaining wall.
Right, and then, but then it also states, it doesn't immediately go right up the bluff behind the retaining wall, does it?
It starts to go up. It looks like a long time ago, there was maybe a flattish area there, but it is all kind of become one with the bluff and it just starts to go straight.
I didn't, I guess I didn't look that way to me when I looked at it, but I didn't see it that way. I thought it looked like there was more space.
It does look at one time like there was some space up there. There's some remnants of a old wooden additional retaining wall, like so top of the retaining wall, looks like at one time, I would venture decades ago, there was a little bit more flatness up there, but that's all overgrown now.
Okay, okay, but in any case, all of that is within that bluff, what did you call that?
Restricted bluff zone.
And what does it mean when you say it's restricted bluff zone? What does that mean?
So I'll be very brief, but back in about 2002-ish,
Okay,
there were some homes that were built, I think predominantly north of Harbor Springs. The bluff continues throughout West Traverse Township, Friendship, and Redmond Township.
okay,
And there were some homes that were built on particularly steep slopes. And with inclement weather or whatnot, those homes were damaged or slipped, you know, and fell down the bluff or whatever the situation was. I don't know all the detail. But at that time, they said we need to put in some regulations to protect the bluff itself
Mhm.
and properties below and above the bluff to prevent damage. So they adopted, and I believe the Emmett County GIS Department helped with this. They identified wherever the slope of the bluff exceeded a certain pitch.
Mhm.
And they identified and said that is the bluff itself. We have the head of the bluff or the top of the bluff, and we have the toe of the bluff.
Okay,
So we have language that says that within that area, no building can be done at all anymore.
okay, so if this
And
were a
then-
vacant lot, there could not be any building behind that dotted line, correct?
No, so the toe,
That's
between the head, top and the toe, no building is allowed at all.
Okay.
But then from the toe, 20 feet out into the property is the restricted bluff zone.
Right,
In that area, we say you can build, but you need to do civil engineering work to demonstrate that the work that you're going to do, the structure you're going to put in place won't cause damage to the bluff, and the nature of how that will be constructed will be safe for the bluff, that we won't damage the bluff, the road above the bluff or the houses above the bluff, or allow for the bluff to give way and damage their home or neighboring homes below. So that line right there is the marking of that restricted bluff zone. This area here is that restricted bluff zone area where they can build, but it has to be reviewed.
so that has to be reviewed by
Right.
a civil engineer.
There, if they move on to the next step,
Okay.
they will have a civil engineer prepare a plan and how that work can be done. We will have our civil engineer review that to make sure we concur. That will all be given to the planning commission, and the planning commission will make the decision on whether that's
Okay.
proper.
The renovations or additions to the present house
The second floor addition
right, the
proposed
second
here.
floor addition. Well, it's gonna extend out, or is it being built on the current,
There's first floor, there's a kitchen below that.
okay, so it's being built on the current
Foundations.
footprint, it won't extend out.
Yeah. The only additional foundation work we're really requesting would be for the connector part.
The green area
Yeah.
shown here.
That's new, that would be new adding to the footprint.
Yeah, that's the only envelope area that we're adding to the site.
I guess I have a personal question, sort of. You know, I can understand, having, looking for houses that are large enough, to accommodate your needs as a family. That's certainly very important. When you found this house, you must have felt that, oh, we need to do some enlarging. At that time, did you understand that these zoning regulations existed?
Yes, I mean, to some extent, yes. It took a long time to close on the property. There was, we bought it from an estate, and there was tax liens and other things in the property, and there was sort of some messy things to clean up. So some of our focus was on that and just making sure that, there was, all the tax liens were taken care of on the property by the estate before we closed, or we closed properly in escrow. We looked at it and said, and I think I think we understood enough of it to say, okay, that we're gonna have to come and have this conversation. And when you walk the street, and it's just right over there, when you walk the street, I mean, there are many garages on the street that have living space above the garage, and it comes in a variety of ways. We like the uniqueness of the street, and we love the footprint of our neighbor's home, and so we kind of looked at it and just said, well, the footprint we're proposing is very similar to Tom and Carol's footprint, so the house immediately next to us. We think the pink house is unique, and we understand that all of these houses are built with footprints that are in violation of today's laws and variances, and because we thought we weren't expanding any of that footprint other than the connector, we thought we'd have a reasonable chance. And we love it up here so much, and there's just not that many homes available, so, in some ways, we knew we were taking a little bit of a chance, but we're hoping to have this conversation.
Had you considered other modifications to the property or to the house to do enlargements, for example, demolishing the garage and putting a garage adjacent to the present structure that's the home with a addition above the garage? Had you considered that?
I mean,
So we wouldn't be so close to the property line of the other?
Yeah, I mean, I think we did talk a little bit about that and, you know, I think we went into it with understanding that when you buy a home below the bluff, the backyards are quaint and they're very nice and they're a very unique setting because you have this bluff, but most of the usable space in the yard is the front yard and the side yard. And it does mean a lot to us to preserve the structure of the home. There's a lot of history there. We've heard stories about how a lady gave birth in the kitchen in that home years ago in a snowstorm, and we've heard some other stories of the history of the home. And so it was important to us to preserve that footprint as well, and just do less damage, do less work. So we really thought this was the best proposal, and we do believe that the space above the garage is, you know, I mean, and again, in a perfect world, even that pink house with the interesting story that it used to be a church is, I mean, when you look at the pictures, it is right on top of our driveway too. And we went in eyes wide open, knowing that, you know, they're right next to each other. And the roof line we're proposing for the garage will not be as high as the pink house and will be very architecturally appealing. And, you know, it's done in a way where there's a pop out. So again, we're trying to keep the overall frame low.
My concern is the enormity of the slab, the offset slab that's gonna occur on the side of the garage, right up on the property line against your neighbor's garden, patio, or whatever.
You're talking about the size of the shed on the back?
No, I'm talking about the side of the garage
Okay.
and the shape.
Well,
It's
if
gonna
yeah,
be it's not gonna be an equal, it's gonna be an offset. It's gonna
what
be-
we're adding is, in a mechanical sense, we're changing the pitch from, right now it's about a 6 or 7, 12.
You're adding 7 feet.
Yeah, we're adding 7 feet to the ridge. And so there's, if you broke it down, you're in that 7, between the two sides, we're adding somewhere roughly in the neighborhood of 20 square feet of wall. It's not much. And what I tried to do on the front side, particularly where the western exposure comes from and the light comes from, to go into that backyard for the neighbor of the pink house, that's where I didn't bring that shed forward like I did on the rear. I did that to, one, keep it within the building setback, at least on the front side from a perception standpoint. Because if he did tear down the garage, which like Michael had mentioned, we could build it 5 feet over. And still have that same, I could build a 2-story structure there.
You
In
could, but it
essence,
wouldn't be on the property line.
No, it would-
Smack up against your next door neighbor's property and
it was,
his known and existing facility.
what I'm saying is that if, let's say we eliminated the structure as it is, I could build a taller, technically a taller, more shadowing element than what we're proposing today.
Once again, it would not be on the property line right up against your.
You're correct about that. You're correct. But it would create more of a, this is more low profile than that, what that solution would be. But you're right, it would not, it would be on the property, it would be in the setback. But it would be more devastating to the neighbor than what we are proposing today. In that sense, it would be a more massive, you talk about the sidewall profile, that version would be bigger than this.
It could be, but it would not be up against the
You're
next door
correct.
neighbor's
Yes.
property.
But we're proposing, we believe, is less menacing than what that would be.
Have you, maybe this is, have you talked to the neighbor about just that?
What I just
situation
expressed.
You know, you're speaking for the neighbor about, you know, well, then that would have been more menacing for the neighbor. But had you presented that alternative to the neighbor when considering how to enlarge this house to accommodate your family?
So, I mean, no, the answer is no. I mean, we're,
Actually see what the neighbor felt.
we met her, we met her, the weekend of July 4th, just for a short period of time and, you know, just meeting someone, getting to know where they're from and a little bit, didn't feel like the right time. If I had another chance to see her and talk to her, and also, you know, we did meet a number of the other neighbors on the street and I think there was a letter, I don't know if it was submitted or not, but I have a letter from the neighbor across the street that says they fully support the plans as well. So, we got the general feeling that the street was supportive also. Our neighbors to the west and directly across the street were all fully supportive. And I think, as Tom said, the house had kind of, it's a beautiful home with beautiful potential. It kind of fallen into some disrepair in recent years. And I think everyone saw it as a chance to invest and make it wonderful again. And so, no, I mean, it just didn't, we haven't been up here a lot when she's been up here, and it just didn't feel like the right thing to do to say, hey, nice to meet you also. Let's talk about the house. So maybe in hindsight, maybe I should have.
How long have you owned the property?
We closed on it in June, so we were trying to close on it, in April.
Understood.
Are you the pink house neighbor?
My sister-in-law is.
And then just to close with some of the questions you asked, I mean, I think we wanted to keep the overall profile of the house as small as possible, again, which is small and original is what we felt like we were doing here. The addition on the second story back isn't really going to be visible to anyone. The breezeway adds some character to it, but it is very small, low profile. And we truly, with some of the alternatives, thought that this was the best version to keep the profile low for the street and for the home.
What's the square footage on the addition above the garage proposed?
522 square feet.
Part of the thinking was not only just the 6 kids now, but and we would not welcome all 6 kids to come when they're fully grown with their families, but we did want the footprint so that at least a couple of them could bring their families at the same time. That was the other thought too. We intend to retire.
As a talking point, would you like me to run through the findings of fact and have some discussion regarding?
I think we've had enough generic discussion. If we go through the 6 points, we might clarify things.
I'm not done. I'm totally in favor of what you're trying to do. I'm totally against having an offset roof line with a large slab of building facing the neighbor's property. And I'm not supposed to give you suggestions, but if you reduced or steepened the angle of the addition of the roof and put another bump out on the back of it.
Just simply mirror the shed on the back.
You would break the plane.
Sure, yeah, and that's certainly.
And that would be much more desirable than a huge slab of siding.
Sure.
We would absolutely be, I mean, I don't want to speak for the professional.
No, but I think I could probably make that work.
I was a project superintendent, heavy construction for 40 years.
So it would, and again, much like I tried to attempt to do on that front shed, was to not go beyond the building envelope. That, and say, okay, we're gonna pop a dormer in here, I'm gonna try to keep it on that 5-foot setback. And I could mirror that to the rear of the building. Yeah, it's a good suggestion.
That would make me happy.
Sure.
We would be happy to, and again, Steve's answer was 522 square feet. If this turns out to be 471 square feet, I'm fine.
You're
Like,
gonna lose a few
yeah,
square
we're
feet.
good. I mean, I just need to go stick 2 teenage boys up there and we don't smell them.
And I think that kind of, your comments kind of lean towards number 5 there, where it talks about whether or not there's substantial injury to adjacent property owners.
I think there is.
Yeah,
Which there
I would
absolutely is.
agree with that.
And I'm not sure how the dormer, I can't quite visualize how the additional dormer would mitigate.
John, the picture that I illustrated, it would be flipped around and it'd be toward the bluff.
That would be more symmetrical.
And it breaks
Yeah,
the plane.
yeah.
it's just a
I
thought.
would hate to sit here and give you an assurance or make it seem like an assurance that if you came back with a revision, flipping some things around, kind of cutting that plane a little bit, that it would be acceptable either. My concern is, again, similar to Bob's, the neighbor. I think we all stated that these backyards are very small and precious. And I understand and appreciate what you're trying to do, but I also am very cognizant of that neighbor's view on the east side of the house. I'm not sure what a modification would look like.
Question. We're voting on 3 things here. Is that what you're saying? We're voting on.
It can all be done as one.
We're voting on this.
It can all be done as one, but their request is essentially for 3 variances. The variance for the second story above the rear of the house itself, the variance for the second story of the portion of the garage that extends into the side yard setback on the east, and a variance for the connecting breezeway that lies in the rear yard setback that would connect to the
My
garage.
thought is that they're over there working and they want to speed this along. Can we vote on the connector and this addition over the kitchen tonight so as to keep them moving? And then have a special meeting?
I would not recommend that. I would recommend that if we're going to make a decision, that we approve the site plan or we ask them to come back with a revised site plan. If you'd like to set a special meeting date.
Why can't we piecemeal
We've had troubles with that in the past.
I think it's a total package to me.
Yeah.
Although I think the second floor addition, providing it passed muster with civil engineering, doesn't seem to be much of an issue, but I see kind of the connector and the addition above the garage kind of going hand in hand. If you have one, you've got to have the other, so to speak. So to me, it is sort of a total package.
And we have had issues in the past where we tried to approve portions of a project and it worsened the situation instead. So we kind of set a precedent at that time that if we were going to entertain an idea, that we would request that they modify their site plan and bring it back to another meeting. If we would like to have another meeting.
How fast could that happen?
Okay.
Well, I think it would primarily be up to the applicant on how quickly they could prepare that site plan and show us the information that we need to see.
Yes.
You sound inclined. I can have it to you next week.
I mean, because I agree with Bob, that was kind of my approach as I looked at all of this, because there was a lot to absorb, was, okay, when I really sat to look at it, it's like, okay, the proposed second floor addition seems pretty straightforward to me, and I don't have a lot of concerns. The proposed connector, I only have a concern as to the size, depending on if the garage stays where it is, or if we ask that it be moved. So I mean, it's like 2/3 of it are sort of, to me, pretty straightforward, but I understand the need for a whole. If you feel like it's most important to do it all at one, then I think I would, accept your opinion on that, but yeah, how soon could we get that?
I don't know that
I'm
you're
not
not
trying to tempt you, I'm trying to make this work.
No, I appreciate it.
I'm trying to make this work for everybody.
No, and
Thank you.
that's very appreciated.
I don't think you'd run off and start anything until you had full approval, would you?
And I'm not telling you my address.
Am I correct? And it sounds like the primary concern regarding this variance request is the proximity and the overall shape of the structure to the property on the east.
It's the impact on the next
And
one.
I think there are two items here. Some of them are to me as a project. Some of them are clearly, it's not of their own doing, et cetera, et cetera. I believe there are alternatives. One has been thrown out as a possibility to change the design. And the other one is it significantly impacts a neighboring property. So 2 out of 3 to me are no.
And, right, I mean, my first thought when I looked at it was, I mean, I'm looking at it from my point of view. If I'm looking at a property, land and building, whatever, I'm looking and seeing, does this suit my needs? Not, okay, this is tight and I want to add a bunch of stuff to it and I'm gonna need, it's like, if it's not what you're looking for, then apologize, but why buy it? So in a way, I see that issue as a, I mean, I'm not sure how to word it properly, but that's kind of where I'm.
I have to be honest with you, I kind of felt that same way, if I was, I have been in that situation of, you know, looking for the right home, and I so appreciate there is very little out there. But you have some unique circumstances in the family, and, you know, certainly I can't speak for you, so, but I know I would have, you know, waited it out until I.
We want you to come here. We want you to bring your family here.
Yeah, but
It's that simple. But we also want your neighbor not to be outraged and hurt.
I very much appreciate that, from all you guys, and, you know, I mean, I think with all due respect, I'm sure some of you guys have had kids, and when they get to be about 10th, 11th grade, you start to realize you're gonna lose them. You're not gonna have much time with them. And, you know, I've got 2 rising 10th graders and a rising 11th grader, and 11th grader is a big skier. And, you know, you look at that data, and by the time your kids are 12 years old, you've spent 75% of the time in their life that they're gonna spend with you has been spent. You know, when they're 18,
I just
that
read
number
that.
92%. And so, with all due respect, that time is so valuable to me. And, we want to spend time up here making wonderful memories while we still have it. You know, one of my kids is probably gonna leave home early to go play junior hockey. So, you know, we saw a house. It was very unique because it's in walking distance to this magical downtown, and, you know, looked at, you know, I talked to Jeff, and he said, he explained it. He said, you're gonna have to go through this process. You know, there's 0 guarantees. I mean, he was very upfront. He said there's 0 guarantees. So we were aware. We looked at the houses on the street, we talked to the neighbors, and I certainly would love to, sir, I'm gonna get Tina's number from you, because she was the one number I was trying to get numbers this week to talk to folks. I mean, I would love to, let's draw it up fast. Let's make Tina happy.
How soon can we turn this around?
Yeah.
We can certainly set a date when we look at the calendar. So I guess the first question that I would throw out there would be, is the applicant willing to ask for, or, you know, request that we table things for the next meeting? Because you could, in theory, say, no, I'd like you to take action tonight, or you could say, we would prefer that we table this and bring back a new plan. So I guess that would be the first question.
It's really in your hands. You decided to move forward. So you get to decide whether you want to deferment and come back with a modified plan.
You can read the tea leaves.
Yeah, I would like to defer and come back soon.
I might add to, you know, I did mention an alternative of moving a garage and adding an addition, so we're not creating a breezeway, and in a way that does retain the beautiful architectural, historical features of that house without, you know, I'm not saying demolish the house. Believe me, the less we put in a landfill, the better.
Right.
But could there also be another two alternatives may be presented. That's up to, of course, you. But, I'm very cognizant of the neighbors' concerns.
And when you mentioned two alternatives, Bob mentioned his alternative of a mere dormer to the back of the building and only increasing the pitch that's adjacent to the neighbor and keeping that would be the modification in the setback. The actual walls or the second story addition would be within that setback off of the building. That's the one version. I guess the other version you're saying would be to take the garage and slide it adjacent to the house. Yeah. And that's certainly
maybe do it,
considerable, I think,
It
from the
might be a
nature of.
side entry garage. I don't know.
That might be really hard. The nature of Harbor Springs in general, I think just to maintain the historical character of the house, I don't think marrying a garage adjacent to the building immediately, I think that breezeway helps breaks massing down. Very much like most of the homes along the road there. Or they either have a completely detached garage, if you look at all the examples along Third Street, it's either completely detached or the only attachment is through a breezeway. And we want to stay with that fabric. We don't want to bring that big mass in, although we could make it bigger, although it still has to have the breezeway. Honestly, it still has to have, now that I think through it, because then now the how it's,
Without
now I'm in the
dramatically
building
changing,
setback.
yeah.
Now I'm in the building setback of a house and not an accessory.
But the setback,
Yeah, I get you.
If I could add another thought here, which I wasn't fully understanding the extent of the use of the garage before. But I should also throw, that might be better in the long run. Because one of the restrictions of guest quarters use is that it cannot be occupied full time. So there's a limit on the duration of stay that someone can have when occupying that space. So marrying those two or changing it so that it is part of the principal building may resolve the issue of wanting space for your sons to be able to be there more full-time than what's permitted by the code. So it would potentially change if we move the garage over, we would eliminate the request for the side yard setback, and it would move that request to a rear yard variance as opposed to on the side. It would just kind of shift where that's being located. And
When you define full-time, if they're much like a lot of people in Harbor Springs seasonal, does that?
28 days.
Was that?
There's a limitation on the duration of stay of 28 days for guest quarters.
and it's family.
It's limited to family and friends. They can stay there for up to 28 days and then they cannot reoccupy the space until 30 days.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I don't see a scenario where anyone's ever up there for 28 days.
Yeah.
Just to be aware of the fact that, I mean, different choices have different caveats.
Okay.
To the date of when we could have the next meeting, I would request that we don't do it next week because I still have to put together, I have to receive this information, put together a packet, send out that packet. So
The meeting has to be noticed.
Yeah, no.
we don't have to renotice in the paper because we had the notice for this meeting and we're setting the date and tabling the motion to another meeting. So I don't have to remail out notices to property owners because they've been notified. We do have to post notice, 24 hours or whatnot before the meeting. But just the timeliness of receiving the information, putting together that packet, getting that packet out to you guys. I would have to do that 2 days from now. And I don't know that we would have the information
27.
I can do the 20.
For everybody.
I could do something during the day, early afternoonish. I have to be at work at 4 o'clock. I know.
Yeah, that would.
Would earlier in the day work for everyone? Do we have any? I don't think we have.
For everybody works.
Yeah.
Do something with during the day.
Yeah,
Work for you?
Make that work.
That would-
So 2 o'clock, that would get you guys back downstate at a reasonable hour.
Yeah, so 2 o'clock on the 26th.
2? Does that give you enough time to get from here to wherever you need to be for work?
Depends on how long it lasts.
Depending on how long it lasts, yeah. Okay, so
Work for you, Bill?
did I hear
I'm sorry.
That work for you?
Oh, sure.
did I hear a motion to table and have a special meeting
Motion?
for the 26th at 2 o'clock?
I motion that we table this discussion to Wednesday, July 26th at 2 p.m.
I'll second.
Let's do a roll call. John Leo,
Yes.
Bob Thoma,
Yes.
Kathy Macho,
Yes,
Michael Behrman.
Yes.
Then we can get together and you can provide me with that
So that's
information.
on,
Wednesday, the 26th at 2 p.m.
If I could offer up just again a comment that, I mean, I love these ZBA meetings because every one of these is a corner case. Everyone has variances and historical content and odd shaped properties and all that. But what we concluded was that the main concern here was the impact this is having on the neighbor. So you can go back and you can consider all of the suggestions that have been made and all of the impressions that you have. For me, the missing element is concurrence with the neighbor. You can go through a whole bunch of work and she's still not going to be pleased, especially if she doesn't feel she's part of the process. So if it were me, I'd be reaching out to her.
Oh, 100%.
Not to us.
Tina's gonna love whatever we come back with, I guarantee it. So,
Bold
no, we're gonna-
statement, but I'll take it.
And
I'm gonna talk to
also,
him, I'm gonna talk to him, and make sure.
and also the folks across the street
Yeah,
and your
yeah.
wonderful neighbors to the west.
We're very lucky, you know, I read what Tina wrote and, you know, she did say she was in support and, you know, she even made some suggestions in her note too, so I think we will, so I appreciate all the dialogue, you guys have really helped because you understand there's a lot of moving parts. We'll work with Tina, I gotta get her number from you, or I'm gonna show up at her house.
We so appreciate.
Yeah, but if you really read her letter,
It's not uninvited.
if you did read her letter, it was, she is in support in general of improving the property and maintaining and whatnot. There's a big but in there.
Yeah, I get it, I get it. Trust me, downstate, my neighbor to the back has built a really gross pool house that's right on top of her backyard, so I don't wanna, you know, I don't wanna be the bearer of any inconvenience for anyone, but thank you guys, it's really nice to meet all you guys.
if your boys have to move out, John will take one, I'll take
There we go, put them to work.
okay.
Then we'd have to talk dowry, but.
Actually, I've got work. Yeah, okay.
All right, we're gonna adjourn this meeting.
All right, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.